podcast.
Hey.
Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing well. We'll find out whether Eamon's doing well. Welcome to this is our first live unscripted doing it in this format, which is exciting. We tried it out a couple times and we enjoyed it. It's a bit of a freer way than we normally do it with interviews.
Yeah.
So anyway, Eamon, tell the people, like always, how have you been? How has your week been?
Just like every week, the week has been a solid 10 out of 10. Can't complain. But I feel extra rejuvenated this week.
All right, okay.
Extra refreshed.
So what's been rejuvenating and refreshing you?
The thing that I did it on maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, one of those days. I basically just blacked out everything on my phone and everything like that. So I locked all my social media apps, my Candy Crush, news, Sky Sports news, everything. Like I locked it all. So the only thing that was unlocked on the phone was just like calls and texts.
Wow, you went on a phone detox, man.
Yeah, detox. Then I tried to stay away from sort of the PlayStation, the laptop, all that sort of stuff. And I just chilled out, just relaxed. And you know.
So what you're telling me is that you did John Mark Comer's Sabbath for a whole week.
Essentially, yeah. Essentially, I'm not gonna lie to you. It was good.
You feel great, don't you? I can
really
see your cheeks pulling with energy.
Honestly, I can't recommend it enough. I was actually quite chuffed with
All right, save it because we might dive into that later on.
Okay, yeah.
Link it in together. Blah, blah, blah. So, all right, cool. So good week now.
Yeah.
You excited for the next? So are you continuing for now, or are you going back to your old ways?
I don't know yet. Not figured that out. Not figured that out.
I mean, you need to get back on at some level so we can like continue to organize stuff.
Yeah, I will.
So from the work side. Cool, that's exciting though.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments. Have you ever done a social media? Well, not just social media, a tech detox. Really, we did a couple as a whole congregation in our local church. When was it? It was over a period of like a year. We did several all you can eat fasts where you could eat whatever you want, but you have to you can have no entertainment, isn't it? And so it's like whatever your entertainment is, obviously none of the standards, and whatever your main thing was. So like no TV, no music, no like non-fiction, fiction books, no whatever it is.
Yeah. And
I thought you definitely felt a benefit, which was pretty cool.
100%, nice. Yeah. So how's your week been, mate?
Mate, it was hectic.
Oh yeah, because the big move happened.
And it's just like moving house is no joke. Because
yeah, I feel
there's a difference between moving and moving house, because moving house you have to, that's when you're starting to shift appliances. It's not just like you pack your little it's not moving to uni. Do you know what I mean? Moving to uni is a joke. It's just like whatever. Yeah. You get your bags. For me, all I had when I was going to and from uni was a plastic bag with my important documents, a suitcase, and my bass guitar. That's basically all I took. See, that's all I needed. Do you know what I mean? Whereas this was like, you accumulate a lot of stuff when you get married. Obviously, you're joining two people's things, and then you got to buy washer dryer, which you have to shift, fridge and all that stuff, table. Like it was wild, and I did not anticipate the amount of sheer hours that went into shifting all that stuff. But thankfully, it's like 98% finished.
Well, let me just tell you something, okay? On Monday, to let the people know, on Monday, me and David went to go help Juan and move, right? And Warner, just tell the people how clean that storage unit was after I got my.
It was you did a really good job. It was like Tetris in real life.
Yeah.
And it was actually such a good job that it meant the rest of the stuff that I had to put in without them was actually super easy because everything was well done, well stocked. I had good foundations for the other boxes I need to put on there. So
if you need me for your to pack storage units or pack a van, let me know. Just
he's looking for a job anyway, so just
all you got to do, right, is just dump it in front of me and then just leave me to it, and then I'm happy. I can do it. It's just easy days, just Tetris, just getting. I love it. It's satisfying for the mind. It's just soothing.
Yeah, that's what happens. So let's get on to our question of the week. I don't know what's it. We need to. We'll come up with a cool little thing for this. I can't remember. But Eamon, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? No pressure.
I got this from James Carr, and this is probably one of the only pieces of advice that I can actually remember, like explicitly, right? And it was this: it was always accept anything that's free. Like, don't be a mug about it. Because you know, there's that thing where it's like when someone gives you something free, you can be like, "Oh, I can't accept this." You're trying to be polite. James is just like, just take it, accept it. If it's free, just accept it, and then that's it. And I tell you what, it's great because there's that thing where you like someone gives you something, you want to be like, "Oh, I can't accept this," and then deep down you really want to accept it, and then they're like, "Oh, if you don't want it, then I'll just give it to someone else or whatever like that." Whereas if you just say, "Yep, I'll take that. Thank you very much." Boom.
Yeah.
Happy days. Can't complain.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, it is. It is. Good job, James. That's a very good one.
Yeah, good job,
James. Mine was from my mum, and I think it was probably like second year when she gave me this. Maybe it was first year. Bit of both. Who knows, to be honest. But she said, "Learn to say no to things."
Nice,
and like for me, like especially at the beginning of uni, I went to a performing arts uni, and my whole thing was and studied music. So my whole thing was just like people will get to know me and my playing. So I'm just like, anyone wants to jam, anyone wants something, like I'm available, I'll be there, and I'll just do loads of stuff. And I was like super busy all the time. And even with the church that I was going to at that time, I was the same. And I was just like doing a lot of different things, and a lot of it I didn't need to do. And so mum was like, you need to learn how to say no and be okay with saying no to people and not feel like you're letting them down, because you need to manage yourself and take care of yourself. And since then, that's one thing that's always in my mind is like, you have to be able to say no to things, even if they seem good. And that's like a massive lesson that I learned, even just going to Cove Call, because I said no to, I basically said no to this artist who, signed to a major label, looked like our careers were all taking off together. We were all mates in the band. You know what I mean? It was like dream come true thing. And God's like, nah, go to Bible college. So I had to say no to all the opportunities that I'd spent 3 years building.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, basically all that stuff fell apart and I was already removed. So even though in the moment I didn't know that my no was a benefit, it actually was. So that just let me know, like, even if it seems like you're saying no to something good, if you think you should say no, sometimes you just have to say no and protect yourself. And you just have to trust God that it's the right decision for you. That's my best advice. That's a good
one. And John Mark Comer, I think it was in the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is right above my head, that he pretty much does a whole chapter or something like that on that just the ability just to say no to people, and it was just super eye-opening. Solid advice. That can't complain.
Exactly. So guys, this is Unscripted, as the title says somewhere. Could be there, depending on what you're watching on, I think. And so I started a Bible reading plan, which is a chronological reading of the Bible, which I heard that someone else in our church was doing it. And I was like, oh, that would be kind of cool. Because I
Yeah.
read through the Bible earlier this year, and I was like, yeah, I'd be interested in seeing like what kind of different insight you get when like something's going on, and then suddenly you get this little bit from here explaining it from somewhere else. And I was like, this is cool, this is cool. So I've just finished like Noah's time, like Noah's like.
Can I ask a question before?
Oh, go ahead.
Is it just like, so obviously it's just, is it like Genesis and then the next one chronologically, the next one, or is it like different passages from different places also weaved in?
No, different passages from different. So for example, near the end of Noah and his generational story, when it's talking about his kids and the kids that they have, it splices in some of like First Corinthians something or another, where it talks about their generations. So I'm really interested to get to like 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings stuff, where you have a lot of the Psalms and Proverbs is written by, a lot of people in that era, and so that'll be really cool, I think, to see that. And then also I'm interested to get to the New Testament and see. I wonder if the New Testament will be pretty much the same or different, because in my head, I feel like there's a lot more. I always think that the New Testament is way more chronological, but it might not be. So I'm interested to find that tidbit out.
Well, I find it interesting how it's all, like rather than just being like this book was written first and this book was written second and whatever. It just like different passages just all spliced in together. Like when you're saying like when you get to the New Testament, like when they've got the stories where you've got stories in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, for instance, are just going to be lumped together and just see the different perspectives.
Yeah, I've got no idea at all. I'm well excited because think how cool that would be. I mean, now I don't want to get my hopes up in case that's not what it is, but it would be cool, like the woman with the issue of blood, if you had their 3 different perspectives.
Yeah.
Because also the Gospels are all written to different demographics to highlight different things. So obviously, if the context you get from those builds that fuller picture. So
that sounds
I'm excited.
Are you doing it on like the YouVersion app or something? Have you actually got like
yeah YouVersion app? That's what I'm doing.
Try it, it sounds quite interesting.
Jump on. But it's called the 1 Year Chronological Bible. There's a few different plans, but this is the one I'm doing, and it's pretty good, to be fair. So anyway, I was reading about Noah, and I was just like taken aback by Noah as just like a guy, because what he actually went through is a lot. And weirdly enough, there's been a lot of memes on Twitter about an ark, and people have been like, "Oh, if you see someone building an ark, let me know." Because that's how bad 2020 is. That people are joking about whether God's destroying the earth right now, which he's not. But I was reading it, and then I also realized that he was, the original lockdown guy. Like he was locked down before we were. I think I've not like looked into it super in depth, but from my brief gandering, he was like the first person to take a prolonged period of time in basically lockdown and isolation in the way that we have. So I think I did a calculation. It was something like he spent 150 days in the boat after the rains had fallen, and then after that it was like a month, and then after that it was like a week before they actually like went on the ground.
Yeah.
So he spent over 6 months in lockdown with his family and a load of animals and stuff, which is like, we exactly. Marilyn commenting, and he didn't have Wi-Fi and Netflix. I was just encouraged by that just in general, because I was like, hey, life's not that bad, really. Obviously, a lot of stuff is happening in 2020, but can you imagine being Noah and everyone you've ever known and your family is dead, like guaranteed, 100% no. Like, they're dead. I've never seen them ever again. and the whole earth, it's like the rest of humanity is down to me and me, my wife, my 3 sons and their wives. And like, that's what we've got to build humanity again. And so like, it kind of puts our lockdown into perspective a lot. But also it was like, he was 600 years before like all the flood stuff started happening. And what it says about Noah, let me find it quickly. It's in Genesis 6, and it says that Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. And so you've got Noah living 600 years. We don't really know a lot of other stuff about him. But we know that he lived 600 years before the flood. And he lived in arguably, if not the worst time in history, as far as a corruption on a global scale. Like I feel like we always think that, you know, this is the issues we're facing in the world are as bad as it's ever been. No one's ever been through what we've been through. But like, there was a time in history where God hitting the reset button was the best thing to do. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how bad it was. It's like when you're trying to draw something or you're doing something and you're going, and then suddenly like you're just like, oh, I need to get rid of this paper. I need to start again because this is ruined. Like that's what God did with the flood.
Yeah.
And so Noah lived 600 years during possibly the worst time in humanity. And we don't know how many other people also walked with God. So it was probably pretty lonely. Even in a socially distant church meeting, he was probably one of the only people there. And but he walked with God during that time period. And we don't know what it looks like, but I think that's pretty encouraging that for even if all you do in life is walk with God and everything else is terrible around you, that is an amazing achievement and a mark for your life, because it says that he was righteous and blameless in his generation. So if you because sometimes you can get into the whole thing of like, what's my legacy? You know, I don't want to do the work of Jesus in my generation. But obviously he had the whole ark thing and all that jazz. But for him, like, he was marked in his generation before the ark purely because he was righteous and he walked with God. And I just thought that's such an interesting thing. And I tried to like put myself in his mindset of like, you're living every day. Because you know, I think a lot of Christians feel that now is like, you look at what's happening in the world and you just feel like, you know, man, the world just gets so much worse. Mercy was watching someone who they were like speaking just before the new year in 2019, talking about 2020. It's going to be an amazing year. 2020 vision, 2020. Doesn't that just sound great? And like, obviously you had all those things about like 2020 being, you know, an amazing year, and God's definitely still done amazing things in 2020. But from the surface, it definitely looks pretty grim. But like, Noah had to live that for 600 years. And then it's not like God came along and he was like, hey, Noah, I see you. You've been doing a great job. You're righteous. You're blameless. Like, tell you what, I know that, you know, your great whatever, Enoch, he did similar to you. And I just took him. So I'm just going to take you. You know what I mean? Like, God could have done that. He could have done whatever he wanted to. But he said, no, I want you to build an ark. And then there's going to be this crazy natural phenomenon that's never happened ever in your existence. Nothing. Right? I want you to build it and like what he's asking him to build is massive. It's not a small boat. It's not a rowing boat. It's got to be enough to fit in his family and every species of animal.
Every person,
So it took him ages to build this thing, and I can imagine in the most corrupt time in the world, people definitely had a good laugh at him for building this massive thing. And when they would have asked him, he would have had to say, God told me it's going to rain. And they were like, what does that even mean? What is that? And he's like, I don't know. I think water's going to fall from the sky. They'd have been like, oh, he's lost it. He's off his rock. He's off his rocker. Cancel culture. Noah's been cancelled, guys. He's like, do you know what I mean? But then he went through all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then even seeing like the world that he knew devastated, completely gone. Even I'm sure there were some people that he liked, like neighbors, even though they were corrupt. You can have a friend who's like going off the rails, but you're still like, oh, you know, I like them. We get on. And like all that gone. And so he goes through his minimum 4 months of lockdown with his wife and his 3 sons and their wives. You've got no idea what that family dynamic was like. Like he was going to take turns cleaning the animals out. Got to go feed them, all that stuff. And then his response when he comes out, when the waters start receding, is instantly a hope and faith-filled response. Because he could have come out being like, oh, finally, I'm so over lockdown. I don't want to be locked down anymore. God, I can't believe you had me in there for so long. You should have told me that it was going to be a minimum of these days. You should have prepared me. You should have given me and my family some material, some entertainment that we could do.
Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't do that. He came out and he was hopeful about what was coming after this period of lockdown, which is what he went through. And then, you know, he sent out a raven, and then he sent out a dove, and then he waited another week. So, you know, he would have probably thought, oh, the boat's landed on something, it's safe now. But he still had to wait another week after he first sent the dove out. And then he sent it out again. And then that's when him and his family could actually leave the boat.
Yeah.
And I just think, like, what an amazing example for us who are all living. Obviously, lockdown slightly eased in most places. In certain other places, it's you know, the rules are being enforced a little bit more now because of different peaks and stuff. But there's a very easy chance of getting disillusioned with, you know, the race stuff in the world.
Yeah.
You know, there's a sexual harassment thing with a Tory MP whose identity has not been revealed yet, but that could be a very explosive. Yeah, this is like happened in the last 4 or 5 days. That there's this Tory MP. All they've said is it's a 50-year-old male, and so we don't know how explosive that's going to be. So, and then you've got the American election coming up, which is always a massive thing in the world, just in general.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many things in the world that you can be like, this might be the worst year I've ever lived in. And it could be the worst year you've ever lived in. I think it might be mine. I can't remember a year that's been like so intense. But you can find hope in that. And especially in the transition of getting out of lockdown, you know, getting out of your arc, your approach can be a hopeful approach.
Yeah.
And you can also take your time with it. Like, I think one thing that's interesting is like Noah didn't just like jump out of the ark. He was like, yes, let's go, guys, we're free.
Good.
Like at first he sent the raven, and then that came back to him, and then he sent the dove, and then that came back to him, and then he sent the dove again. And then when it didn't come back, he was like, all right, guys, now we're ready to go. And God blessed him and his family. And like people were blessed because of the fact that Noah was someone who walked with God. And even after lockdown, and like we all benefit from the fact that Noah walked with God, but it wasn't something that was like if we were living with Noah, we wouldn't be like, oh, Noah's like such an amazing, inspirational person.
Yeah.
You'd just be like, Joe Bloggs, who's also in our church, and just another one like us, but he did, what God told him, and he walked with God, and he lived a life of hope. And that just really encouraged me. I was like, Noah was, a standout guy, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think it was good what you're saying, that when that he wait, like at the end, like he waited and he sent out the raven, he sent out the dove. They had to wait another week or whatever. I think it's interesting, the fact that, with ourselves, it's with this quarantine and things getting easy and stuff. Like there's almost like this thing of like, right, we've been locked up so much, now let's just run headfirst out into the world, do this, be super busy because past few months. But it's not about just running out headfirst. We can take our time, we can be patient with it, but have our hope and our trust rooted in what God is doing and who he is when we're going out and doing those things. That we can slowly ease our way back in, or we can slowly just so calmly come back in, rather than just saying, right, they've eased the lockdown, so let's just go out, let's just do this, let's do this. I've lost 4 months, 5 months of my life, so let's just run out head first and let's just repopulate the earth or whatever Noah was thinking, or let's just get the animals out or whatever. But it's just like, okay, let's just chill. Let's just be slow. Let's be patient with this. Like, just trusting in God, trusting what he's doing. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the story in the New Testament of the disciples crossing the lake when there was the storm, and then Jesus gets annoyed with them because before the flood, God gave Noah a promise or a covenant, and told him, "I'm going to do all this amazing stuff through you and your family." Da 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 da. And then we don't know what happens, because the next time he's communicated to, after he goes into the ark, is when he comes out and him and his family are out again. So it doesn't tell us during his lockdown life whether God gave him another, rhema word and like directional, and for all we know, all he had to hold on was what God spoke to him and his devotion to God. But God reaffirmed his word to him when he came out, and like I would say that a good thing to do, which is always a good thing to do, but I'd say especially now when we're gradually going to begin to get back to non-lockdown life. We don't know what's happening with the virus yet, but as far as our movement freedoms, they're pretty close to being back to normal. And so, find what's the word of God, what's God saying to you at this time, to direct your movements in this new world. Because just like Noah went and stepped out into a completely new world, all these different things he could do, but he had the word of God to be like, this is my anchor and direction. And it could be something that God's already said to you, like with Noah, he already gave him a promise and then reaffirmed the promise later on. Or it could be something completely new. But I think it's a much healthier approach for us to view life in that hope-filled manner, and that patience is something that it's hard, because when you feel restricted and almost like repressed, you have that inkling. I don't know whether it's human nature or whatever it is, but there's that thing of like, once you're allowed out again, you're all the things you've been dreaming about and writing on a list, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do, you just do it all in a week, do it all in a month. But we can be patient, send a raven, send a dove out, and but also it's wise, because we know, even just if we're talking about the practicality of the situation we're in, the virus isn't entirely controlled. I'd say that way. And so, you know, if 20,000 people are just out in Manchester in relatively close proximity, you know, quite a lot can happen quite quickly.
Yeah.
As we've found in, you know, in Oldham, definitely there's been spikes, but they've also been different big gatherings. Near our old house, there was a rave of a few hundred, maybe 1,000 people.
Wow.
And so it's stuff like that where, you know, oh yeah, literally like
that's crazy.
A 3 to 5 minute drive from our old house.
Wow.
They had a rave like near the peak of lockdown, and so that was a bit wild. But yeah, Noah was the original lockdown lifestyle. So, you know, if you want to have a look at how it doesn't really show what he actually did during lockdown. So maybe you won't get any entertainment tips, but it's just a great perspective of like, there is someone in the Bible who went through what we've gone through, but like to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And like, it worked out well for him in the end. So
good job, Noah.
Yeah. That's me. Done.
That was really good,
That's my Unscripted. Yeah, so I encourage everyone, have a if you're looking for something to read, read the chronological Bible. It's actually pretty fun. So
just interesting, like someone like Noah, like because obviously I grew up in the church, going to church since I can remember. So fun fact, my first memory that I can actually think of was actually in the car in the Ford Mondeo driving to King's Church in Manchester. First memory that I actually have. Madness. But the thing I'm trying to say is, like when you grow up in the church, like, you hear stories like David and Goliath, Noah, all that sort of stuff, Noah's Ark, Daniel and the Lion's Den, and you're like, you know it, but then like you just think because you know it, you can sort of skip it in the Bible because you already know the story. Do you know what I mean? There is so much more depth that you get from it if you just study it. So I encourage everyone, you know, go back into those old stories that you've known, you've heard loads before, because you'll be able to pull some new stuff out, some fresh stuff, and see it from a different perspective than what you get from the kids' Bible or whatever you're taught, you know, during in church. So yeah, that's good quality.
Yeah, even a book like Daniel, which is now becoming one of my favorite books in the Bible. Over the past year, I've read it numerous times, and the most encouraging thing for me is that it's a story about, well, it's not just a story, obviously. It's the account of someone and his friends who, like, primarily they just worked hard, and that's what they did. Obviously, you know, Daniel interpreted dreams, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had this amazing stand for God in their time and all this stuff. But that's only like snapshots of their life. The majority of their life, they just lived in a place that wasn't their own. They were technically captives and slaves, but they were in a privileged position, and they worked hard in that area. And that's like, you get that all the way through. Even we were talking about this just before, but the ending of the last few chapters of Daniel gets like super depressing and like confusing. It's just like, what's going on? And that's literally what Daniel's like as well. Daniel's like, I was mourning for like 3 months, and then I got this vision, and I was like, what does it mean? And then they told me what it meant, and I was like, right, okay, what do I do with this? And then the angel's like, don't worry about it, Daniel. Just go back to work. You'll be fine. Don't tell anyone. And like, you know, I think that's an amazing thing. It's like, because I feel like it's easy to think the stuff that we do in normal life is mundane, and like we try and chase that big Daniel and the Lion's Den moment, but it's out of those. Like, for example, when Daniel, that first instance that Daniel had, where all the wise men in the land were going to be killed because the king was like, hey, I had this horrible nightmare. I want you to interpret it for me, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. because I want to know that your interpretation is legit. And if none of you can tell me, I'm going to kill all of you, every single one. And Daniel wasn't even in the meeting. Him and his mates were even there. You know what I mean? And so, luckily, they had a good relationship with the people that they worked with. Just like Jenny was talking about, invest in the relationships that you're in. This was if you missed last week, go watch it. It was really good. Jenny talked about, she went a lot into the importance of just genuine relationships with people that you're around. And so Daniel had this relationship with someone who worked for the king, and he asked him on the side, "Hey man, what's going on? I'm hearing some crazy stuff. Possibly could die. I'd like to know why." And he gets told, "Oh, this is the king's stipulations." But that was just in the normal living. That wasn't like special event, Daniel. And then he just went to God. He was like, "God," they prayed together and they were like, "God, please give us an interpretation." And then he woke up in the morning and he received the interpretation, tells the king, saves everyone's life, gets promoted, da da da. It's pretty amazing. But then even in that story, there's literally so much, it's amazing. Even in that story, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't get an interpretation, but they prayed together. So they all pray. Daniel gets the interpretation. Daniel's the one who he's with the king. He tells the king this. He gets the promotion. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego just doesn't really tell us whether they were like, "Man, I wish God could give me the interpretation. Why is it always Daniel?" Do you know what I mean? But also, when Daniel was promoted, he also then told the king, he was like, "Look, these are my top 3 guys. They're ride or die. They're brilliant.
Nice.
You need to promote them." And so, even though they weren't directly involved in, they weren't the people speaking out the interpretation to the king. I don't know why I'm trying to say fair. They still benefited off that. And that's such an amazing thing of you can go to war with each other in prayer for something, and you might not be the person who gets the. You might not be the one who gets the viral video on YouTube. You might not be the person who's getting interviewed on Sky or Fox or CNN, whatever the medium is. You might not be the person whose worship album is being sung everywhere, but you've still been a part of that in your praying. And it's a good example of, if you're someone who is being promoted, is help the people that you're connected with, rather than, because Daniel could have very easily been like, "Look guys, I'd love to chat, but I'm now in charge of so much. I'm so busy. Thanks for the prayer meeting that we shared together from 6:30 till 8 a.m. I'll see you guys later. Hope everything goes well for you." He was like, "No, I'm gonna I'm gonna look after you guys, and we're in this together." So there's I don't even know how we got here. I think I was just trying to.
But Joe, it's interesting. You said earlier that just before, you said that Daniel wasn't even in the meeting; it was just normal life. And I was reading this in John Mark Comer's book. I'm not sponsored by John Mark Comer. It's just there's loads of stuff that's related today. It was in I think in his book Garden City. He's talked about how, in a way, in this modern world, we've sort of created spiritual and unspiritual. That Sunday meetings, a prayer meeting, midweek groups, whatever it is, that's all the spiritual stuff. But me going to work, driving in the car, going shopping, that's not spiritual. Whereas, in fact, that's not the way it is, because obviously, being who we are, church is not a building, it's a people. And there's you can walk through the shop and God can be like, "Right, here you go. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to say." And then boom. It's the fact that all moments, everything that we do is spiritual, but it's about tapping in and sort of, I don't know how to word it properly, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
No, I think it's an awareness thing, isn't it?
That's the word I'm looking for. Awareness.
Because if you're not aware, it doesn't matter how much is actually going on in the spiritual around you. You're there's nothing you can do. I can't remember what this quote was, but I was watching something and someone quoted about about power, and they were saying power is all about awareness, because you could be the most powerful person in the world, but if you don't know you are, then you're powerless.
Ooh.
And
I like that.
Yeah, I was like, that's hitting me nice. And I think that's so true, especially for Christians.
Yeah.
Is when you become a Christian, you get put into a spiritual warfare. And there's a podcast that Eamon recommended. It's Upper Room Convos, where they chatted to the guys who kind of run or involved in International House of Prayer. I recommend that you listen to it this week.
Good.
It's pretty long, so if you don't like long form content, just like do it in chunks. But it's really amazing, great insight, very encouraging. But what was I saying now? I got into IHOP and then I totally forgot. About spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Is that one of the guys kept seeming to have very strong racial encounters with his neighbors. And one of the guys who lived there, the father of the house, at some point said something really bad to his wife. And so he was going over to talk to them, and they were just like, they were always really aggressive, really antagonistic. And then there was a different occasion where he was out, and then he ran into them, and then the door, I think he was like with his kid or something, and the families was in the park with the granddaughter and granddaughter and the granddaughter's grandfather. That was a long way of saying it.
Yeah, the grandfather and the granddaughter,
and then the granddaughter started flipping out, throwing a tantrum is what it would have looked like when he arrived. And the guy in question was a black guy, and just started freaking out. And he was like, "Oh, what is with this family? Like something trippy is going on here." And like his first instinct was, this is something demonic. And then his second instinct was, this is like maybe she has epilepsy or something stroke inducing, a bunch of different stuff. And he wasn't too sure, but then he suddenly started speaking in tongues. And then he just said, in the name of Jesus, stop and leave. And then the girl just went completely still. And the grandfather was watching this whole thing happening. And he's like, what the heck? And so he was like trying to get the grandfather to lift her, but he didn't. So he carried the girl who had just been, throwing a tantrum because he had suddenly come close to them and, was being very aggressive to him and all this kind of stuff and, being very weird. And, he said he speaks in tongues the whole time, carrying her to the house. And then he knocks on the door, and the mum opens the door. It's like, what have you done to my daughter? While her dad is there with him still, because obviously he's not going to leave. And so he left then, and then he went home and he was like, God, I'm so confused. Like, what just happened? Like, what's going on? And God was like, the spirit of supremacy had a hold over that family. And because you were unaware of what was going on, and you didn't approach them in the right way, you'd missed opportunities to break the hold of that spirit over that family, and it had infected the different generations. And he just bawled out crying because he was like, oh Lord, I'm so sorry. But I even though that is like, it sounds like a bad ending, I was actually really encouraged because it's that scripture of, we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but against rulers and authorities. And like, that's why prayer meetings are so important, and prayer in our own life is important. And, the practice of fasting and all these different things, because you might see someone who says something bad on Facebook, or something you disagree with on Facebook or Twitter, on the news, and you might be tempted into disliking that person. But there is something that is influencing them. And if you're a Christian, you are in that spiritual warfare. And so, ask God for insight into what's actually going on here, what's behind this thing. Because if you're around someone where, something's tough, God's put you around that for a reason, because you're his representative and ambassador in that situation. So, yeah, anyway, I guess we'll end on that because we've pretty much hit time now.
Yeah. And we'll put, after the podcast, I'll put the link to that. After this podcast, I'll put a link to that podcast we were talking about on this page. That's hard to say. I'll put a link in so you can listen to it. Well worth listening to. Really, really good. Just want to say great insight and stuff like that.
Very, very good. Yeah, I actually might listen to it again. It was that good because he said so much insightful stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like, if you don't soak it in a bit more, you can just get whiplash and then forget it all.
Yeah.
So So hope you guys have enjoyed Unscripted.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. Yeah. So if you want an interesting thing to go and read, you find a chronological Bible plan, go through it. There's some that are like over a year long, but you can be as relaxed or as intense with it as you want. But I think it's a good thing for us just as Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, this is just a little thing I'm throwing out there. I really like the name The Way, because that was I don't know if people know this, that was the actual
Followers of the Way. Yeah.
That was the original name that was how Christians were called, and that's what Jesus called people that were his disciples, is followers of the way. And he was also the way, the truth, the life. So Jesus is literally the way that his disciples were then called followers of the way. So if you see followers of the way in the Bible,
Yahweh
is talking about, Christians and stuff. But I'm just a fan of that, because I think sometimes Christian doesn't always communicate.
It comes with a lot, doesn't it?
What it actually is, yeah. And I think nowadays it does come with a lot. And followers of understanding that you're a follower of the way that Jesus lived his life, but also the way is actually the person of Jesus as well. Mm-hmm. Like, I think for me, that's a really easy thing in my brain to be like this and this, Yeah. So yeah, just like that as well. Next little bit. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching along as well. We've been doing this for I don't even know how long we've been doing this now.
10 weeks, 11 weeks, 12 weeks.
Yeah, every week. So thank you guys for getting involved. We also really appreciate all your comments as well. We love seeing you guys interacting. So we hope you have a great week. And next time we're on, let us know if you listen to the podcast.
Yeah. And as well, next week we're taking a week off, just to make everyone aware.
A week off! Oh my gosh!
You sound surprised if we didn't organise this before.
No, I was being sarcastic for people. Yeah.
We're taking a week off. We've not fallen out or anything like that. It's nothing that deep. It's just, we've done this for a long time. So it's nice to take a break, to rest, take a social media break this week. Do it next Sunday.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And we're going to rejuvenate, get the rest of the guest stuff. So it's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah. Big things are coming.
Yeah. So thank